Well, I'm with Professor John Wyatt, Professor of Neonatal Pediatrics.
Correct.
Is that right? Is it University College London?
University College London.
Fantastic. And you have come to the Brephos conference here to speak about the unborn with your doctor's hat on. Why do you want to protect the unborn?
So I've spent most of my life working as a baby doctor. And, you know, as a baby doctor, I've invested a huge amount of time and energy and resources and spent the government's money trying to protect young babies and trying to give them the very best possible chance of life. The bizarre thing in modern hospitals is that one part of the hospital we're trying to protect in lives, the beginning of life, and then in another part of the hospital, in the fetal medicine unit, there are actually abortions taking place of babies, often because of medical problems. And sometimes those abortions are taking place even at greater stages. The babies are bigger and tougher and stronger than the babies that we're struggling to save in another part of the hospital. And so you say to yourself, this can't be right. And so my feeling is that I'm called to be there to be a voice for these babies who can't speak for themselves.
Yeah, because from a scientific point of view, you're thinking there is nothing morally relevant that is different between the case of let's say a 26-week baby who is, trying to be given every chance at survival, as opposed to a 23-week-old baby who can be aborted, who can be terminated.
Yes, I don't believe there is any fundamental moral significance. And in fact, the 26-week baby can be aborted in the UK. It's legal for abortions to happen at any stage in the pregnancy, all the way up till term. And so there are abortions happening at the very same point as that we're capable of keeping babies alive. And the only moral difference is that in the one case, the baby is outside in the world, and therefore we as a society can show our compassion and concern for this being, whatever the parents think. Even if the parents don't wish their child to survive, I as a doctor have a duty of care to this child, and I have to put the child's interest first. I have a legal duty to put the child's interest first. In the second case, at 26 weeks, the unborn baby, it's as though the unborn baby is hostage within the body of the mother. And in fact, the law doesn't recognise the status of the unborn baby. It has no legal personality. So that's the moral difference. The moral difference is not in any difference in the baby, it's in the situation, the context.
Yes, and you were giving an interesting story about the 12-week scan. So the person doing the ultrasound for the 12-week scan, if that pregnancy is wanted, the language is of, oh, you have a baby and doesn't it have daddy's chin and all of that.
That's right. So the single most important thing that the person who is doing the scan needs to know is they need to work out, is this a wanted baby or is it not a wanted baby? And they need to work that out before they start the scan. Once they start the scan, if it's a wanted baby, they turn the screen to the mother, and often the father's there as well, and the language is all about the baby. Yes, he's doing really well, and he's wriggling around, and oh look, he's sucking his thumb, and he looks just like his dad, and it's all this kind of baby talk. But if the baby is not wanted, the screen is turned away from the mother. And the language changes completely, and they talk about the pregnancy. The pregnancy is growing normally, some normal size. It's all this impersonal language, and yet the being in the womb is exactly the same. So the bizarre thing that's happened is that your value, your moral status, depends on whether you're wanted or not. And yet, elsewhere in the whole of human life, if we were to say the value of this child depends on whether it's wanted or
this minority group within society,
or this elderly lady who nobody wants, well, clearly her life is of no significance.
Because the strong have chosen the moral value to place on that person. And this is the exact equivalent.
But we would be appalled at any right-thinking person would be appalled at the idea that we value human beings according to whether other people think their life is worth living. But we've accepted this in the unborn without doctors and healthcare professionals have accepted this. And what's more, they think they're being incredibly sensitive and sophisticated and professional. That they can talk this two languages, completely seamlessly shift from one to the other, just in order to be sensitive to the person.
And what shifts is what they see. So what they see is managed, depending on whether the baby is wanted or not, and then how they speak of the issue is altered. So from the point of view of trying to stand up for the unborn, what do you think we need to do in terms of what people see and how people speak about this issue?
Thanks. Well, I think you put your finger on them. So I think language is incredibly important in this whole debate. And the interesting thing is there is no neutral language.
Right.
As soon as we use words in this area, we are already expressing a moral commitment.
Yes.
So we either talk about the unborn baby or we talk about the fetus.
Right.
Or the pregnancy. And as soon as we do that, we've already made a moral commitment.
Yes.
We've either recognized this being as one of us, part of our family, part of the human family, or we've distanced ourselves by using a medical term like fetus or pregnancy. And so the language, I think, is really important. And I think as Christians, therefore, although we get criticized for it, and I've been frequently criticized for using this kind of language, that it's coercive, it's manipulative, and so on, I think we have to say there is no neutral language. But the language that I'm choosing to use is because I believe this is a precious person, a member of the human race, and it's a baby.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, I've often found this talking to women who's had abortions, is that the women who've had abortions, generally speaking, they use the same language. So the professional says, no, it's a pregnancy, it's a fetus. The woman says, I killed my baby. It was a terrible thing. I felt I had no choice. But I knew what I did.
Because no one speaks in the language of fetus,
No, that's right.
Meghan and Harry are having a royal baby, not a royal fetus.
Absolutely. And of course, that you make exactly the point. Look at the incredible fascination there is in the royal pregnancy or in a celebrity's pregnancy. But no one is talking about this. It's all about the baby. It's all about how wonderful and so on. So there's an extraordinary doublethink that goes on here. But it's the professionals who cultivate this neutral, impersonal language because it's to make you feel better.
Yes.
No, well, let's not talk about a baby. We're talking about a pregnancy. You don't need to feel guilty. We're very compassionate people.
Right.
And we're helping you not...
Yes.
We're reducing the guilt.
Yes. So that's about the language that we use about the unborn. What about the images? Why is what we see so very controlled when it comes to this area of life?
Well, again, it's a fascinating thing, is that images are very important. One of the things that interests me is that every child has a photo album, and whereas it used to be that the photo album started at the moment of birth, with some grainy image taken after birth, now every baby's photo album starts with an ultrasound image. And the child is shown this image and says, that's you, that's what you look like.
Right.
So the image is again powerful and is recognised by parents. Watching your child on an ultrasound scan is a very moving experience. I've had it myself, and I've seen thousands of ultrasound scans of other people's babies, which frankly haven't done a whole lot. But when I see the ultrasound scan of my own child, this has a huge impact. So images are very important. Wonderfully, as science advances, it's given us more and more images of the unborn child. And again, amazing paradox. It's not Christian people who are celebrating the images of the unborn child. It's Discovery Channel, or it's some secular science documentary which shows these spectacular pictures of a developing child, of the wonder of what is happening in the womb, of the way the child is responding to stimuli and to sound and to light, and so on. And I see that as a very positive thing. It's all about seeing the creation. But again, this doublethink in the secular world is that when it comes to abortion, all of a sudden we sort of take those images away, we shield people from those images, don't think about it. It's just a blob, it's just a bit of tissue, it's part of the woman's body, it's of no significance. And this is a sort of misguided attempt to reduce the guilt, to reduce the shame. And one of the things that many women, after they've had an abortion, that they're feeling often, who approach people because of guilt and sense of distress and so on, very often they say, if only someone had said, are you sure about this?
Right.
If only, but the professionals had said, no, don't worry about it. It's a pregnancy. Everything's fine.
Yes.
So the attempt to assuage guilt is often completely forlorn. It doesn't work.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it's deeply rooted in a professional culture.
Do you have hope that with ever increasing ability to see inside the womb, that technologically we're able to see more this minority group who we are oppressing? And surely the more we see that minority group, hopefully the more we'll feel the empathy and that will translate?
I do. I actually do. I think so. And I think we should celebrate. And I wish, that churches would celebrate the creation more. It seems to me bizarre that these secular documentaries, the BBC and Discovery Channel and everything else, Sky, have all these wonderful programs celebrating the creation, and when we go to church, we don't have any of that. It isn't seen as relevant to celebrate the beauties of God's creation. So yes, I think as we get more of a scientific and understanding of what's happening in the womb, the harder and harder it is to keep this
dehumanization going,
the depersonalization.
Yes.
And it is interesting that when the abortion debates were going on, say in the 90s and the 80s, very often the debate was about, it's a blob of jelly.
Yeah.
Very interesting that you don't hear that language now.
Right.
Nobody talks about blobs of jelly because people know it's not true.
We've seen
that is not a blob of jelly. That's my baby. So I think images are powerful. I think one of the very interesting and also controversial issues is whether the images of abortion itself, which are deeply distressing and painful to watch, and which the doctors go out of their way to try and shield people so that you don't, again, to assuage your guilt, will make sure that you'll never see these images of what is actually happening in an abortion. Whether actually, as Christian people, it's our responsibility to painfully but sensitively show people actually we can't shield you from the reality of what is actually happening in abortion clinics.
Yes. Or even just describe it. I mean, I had a friend who just said to me that he just read out to friends from Wikipedia a description of the process for a 20-week-old baby, and they got angry and he said, well, I'm just this is not a pro-abortion life site. This is Wikipedia, but the truth confronts.
The truth does, and I think we have to find a way sensitively of confronting people with the truth. But of course we do it in the knowledge that so many people have been touched by these issues, that 1 in 3 people in our society have had an abortion or will have an abortion in their lifetime, that for every woman there's a man, that there are deep scars and hurts. So when we show these images, we have to be aware or talk about the reality of abortion. We have to do it, if you like, with tears in our eyes, not with rhetoric and judgment or harshness.
So let's kind of finish with that, because I think you spoke very wisely about the grace and truth of Jesus. And yes, there is truth, and there is that prophetic element that we are called to speak truth to power. But what about that incarnational side that you drew out? How can we speak with grace into this issue?
Well, I do think this combination of grace and truth is a really powerful and important idea, and that truth by itself can be very harsh. It's like a knife that can be used to stab and wound and hurt. And we've all come across situations where people have talked the truth, but in ways which have been intensely wounding and damaging. But if you just have grace by itself, grace without truth is deceptive. It's cheap grace, and ultimately it lies. It becomes something which is manipulative. But if you have grace and truth utterly intermingled, then I think you have something very powerful, and that is the very person and character of the Lord Jesus himself. And if we think about how Christ confronted people, as he confronted people who were in deep distress or who were in sin or broken in some way, he combines the two. He doesn't shield the truth.
Right.
He says some very hard things.
Right.
But his compassion, his gentleness, he doesn't break a bruised reed, as it says in Isaiah and so on. There's these beautiful images of this gentleness. I'm gentle and compassionate of heart.
Yes.
So what does it look like practically? Well, I think there are many examples, thankfully, of ways that Christians are reaching out to people affected by abortion in ways that combine this compassionate and gentle aspect of Christ without at the same time not shielding the truth. And so I think it's offering people who are asking for help, it's offering them honest, accurate information, but at the same time compassion, not rushing to judgment. I think one of the image I like is one beggar helping another beggar to tell him how to find bread. That we're not in any way sitting in judgment on other people. Interestingly, many people who are involved in this ministry have themselves had an abortion.
Right.
Many are women or sometimes men who've been affected by abortion, who found healing for themselves, and then they're now reaching out to others and wanting to share the healing that they've found. And I think these are often the people who are able to speak with integrity and authority in this situation, and others of us can support them in their ministry. So this incarnational ministry, I think, needs to go hand in hand with the more prophetic side. And I think you can see that by themselves, both the prophetic ministries and the incarnational ministries have potential. They can go wrong. The people who concentrate on the prophetic ministries can become very harsh, dogmatic.
Rhinos.
That's right. Rhinos who are always just engaging and rather prickly and difficult people to engage with. And they need the incarnational people. They need to be softened by the compassion and gentleness of Christ and his that side of the ministry. At the same time, the people who are predominantly involved in the compassion ministries can become compromised. They can lose their commitment to truth. They can blend in with the culture, and they need to be held to account by those who have a prophetic edge. So we need one another in God's church, and together we can reflect the activity of Christ. We can be salt and light together.
Brilliant. Well, that's a wonderful vision. United together in Christ, who is full of grace and truth. Professor John Wyatt, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.